The ancient structure hung in space like a jewel. It orbited a dying star, massive and perfect, covered in symbols that glowed with soft light. The symbols moved and shifted across its surface in patterns no one could understand. Ambassador Thelzara stood before the main observation window of the research station. Her 6 crystalline eyes tracked the movements on the structure's surface. She had been watching for 6 weeks now. 6 weeks of failure. "Another calculation complete," her assistant reported. The young Quillarian's voice carried disappointment. The quantum array processed 17 billion possible combinations. None of them work. Thelzara's crystalline body flickered with frustration. Her species had solved mathematical problems that other races called impossible. They had built computers that could predict the movement of entire galaxies, yet this puzzle defeated them. "Show me the results again," she said. The holographic display filled with numbers and star charts. The structure was clearly some kind of lock. Behind it lay chambers filled with technology from the precursors. The precursors had vanished 2 million years ago, leaving behind only ruins and mysteries. This was the first sealed precursor facility anyone had ever found intact. Commander Vosatek entered the observation room. His 6 legs clicked against the metal floor. His insectoid body was covered in the battle armor of the Hronite warrior caste. He had no patience for endless calculations. 47 hours, he said. His mandibles clicked with irritation. 47 hours your people spent on this attempt. We could have breached the structure by now. And destroyed everything inside, Thelzara replied. The precursor technology could advance every species in the concordance by centuries. We will not risk it with brute force. Vosatek's antenna twitched. Then let my strategists try. The Hronite military mind has solved problems your mathematicians cannot. In the corner of the observation room, Dr. Marcus Webb listened to the argument. He said nothing. The human observer rarely spoke during these meetings. Earth had only joined the Galactic Concordance 3 years ago. Humanity was still learning its place among the stars. The other species treated humans with polite dismissal. Humans were new. Their technology was primitive. Their understanding of quantum physics and faster-than-light travel had only recently begun. They were observers, students learning from their betters. Marcus didn't mind. He took notes on his datapad and watched everything with quiet attention. At 35 years old, he had been chosen as humanity's representative because of his doctorates in archaeology and linguistics. But here, surrounded by species millions of years more advanced, he felt like a child in a university lecture hall. The human observes quietly, Vosatek said, noticing Marcus for the first time. Does your species have anything to contribute? Or do you simply watch your superiors work? Marcus looked up from his datapad. I'm here to learn, he said simply. Earth has nothing like this. I'm grateful to witness the attempt. Vosatek's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. At least the human knew his place. Over the next week, 5 more species made their attempts at the star puzzle. That's what they called it now. The star puzzle, a name that made it sound simpler than it was. The Mindari went next. They were telepathic beings, creatures of pure thought who existed partially outside normal space. They believed they could sense the puzzle's intention. 19 hours they spent in deep meditation, their collective consciousness reaching out to touch the ancient structure. The puzzle did not respond. The Zendori came after. They were silicon-based life forms who perceived reality as frequency and vibration. They analyzed the puzzle as pure energy, mapping every wavelength and harmonic that emanated from its surface, 31 hours of continuous scanning and analysis. The puzzle remained locked. The Karathi attempted next. Their species existed slightly out of phase with normal time. They could perceive multiple timelines simultaneously, seeing past and future possibilities branching out in quantum arrays. They viewed the puzzle across 17 different timeline branches, searching for the path that led to success. They came close. So very close. For a moment, the puzzle reacted. The symbols aligned in a pattern that made Thelzara's hearts race with hope. Then the pattern collapsed. The puzzle reset itself. 23 hours of work vanished. Marcus watched all of this. He made his notes. He asked occasional questions that the other species found strangely basic. "Why do you assume the puzzle is mathematical?" he asked once. Thelzara had answered with patience. "What else could it be?" The precursors were the most advanced civilization in galactic history. Their technology operated on principles we still don't fully understand. Obviously, their security systems would be equally sophisticated. Obviously, Marcus agreed, and returned to his notes. Commander Vossatek's turn came in the second week. He brought the full might of Hronite military analysis to bear on the problem. His species had conquered 300 worlds through superior strategy and tactical thinking. They could identify patterns in chaos, find weaknesses in any defense. 52 hours of continuous work. Vossatek's tactical computers processed information through hive-mind networks that connected thousands of military strategists across Hronite space. They attacked the puzzle from 60 different angles simultaneously, probing for vulnerabilities, testing responses, adapting their approach with each new piece of data. The structure responded, but not the way they hoped. A pulse of energy erupted from the ancient megastructure. Warning klaxons blared throughout the research station. The pulse was not an attack, but it was clearly a warning, a defensive response. The structure was telling them, "You are going about this wrong." After the Hronite failure, a council meeting was called. Representatives from all 47 species of the Concordance gathered via holographic communication. The debate grew heated. "We should use controlled plasma charges," one delegate suggested. "Cut through the outer hull and—" "Absolutely not," Thelzara interrupted. "We've detected no less than 12 separate power sources inside that structure. If we breach it improperly, we could trigger a chain reaction. The entire facility could be destroyed." "Then what do you propose?" Vossatek demanded. "We've exhausted our greatest minds. Perhaps the puzzle is unsolvable. Perhaps the precursors never meant for it to be opened. Or perhaps, another voice suggested, we are thinking about it wrong." The debate continued for hours. Marcus listened from the human delegation's small corner of the conference room. Earth's ambassador, an elderly woman named Chen, sat beside him. "You've been very quiet," she whispered. "Do you have any thoughts?" Marcus looked at the holographic image of the star puzzle rotating at the center of the conference chamber. "I'd like to see it," he said. "In person. Not just in recordings or holograms." Ambassador Chen raised an eyebrow. "You think that would help?" "Maybe, I don't know. But everyone else has tried their way. What harm could it do to let me look?" Chen considered this. Then she raised her hand, waiting for a pause in the argument. When she had the floor, she made her request simple. "The human observer wishes to view the puzzle directly, as a learning opportunity. We request permission to bring Dr. Webb to the forward observation deck." The other delegates exchanged looks. Several mandibles clicked. A few crystalline bodies flickered with what might have been amusement. "Very well," Thelzara said. There was kindness in her voice. The human wanted to see the puzzle up close. It was a reasonable request from a young species still filled with wonder at the universe. "Tomorrow, Dr. Webb. I will escort you myself." Marcus nodded his thanks. That night, he stood at the window of his quarters, looking out at the stars. The star puzzle hung in the distance, its surface glowing with those mysterious, shifting patterns. Somewhere in his mind, a thought was forming, but he couldn't quite grasp it yet. Tomorrow, he would see it clearly. And perhaps, just perhaps, he would understand what everyone else was missing. The forward observation deck offered an unobstructed view of the star puzzle. Marcus stood at the transparent wall, his breath catching in his throat. Holographic projections didn't do it justice. The real thing was magnificent. The structure was enormous. It stretched 5 kilometers across, a perfect sphere covered in glowing symbols. The symbols moved like living things, sliding across the surface in patterns that seemed almost like water flowing. Colors shifted from blue to gold to silver, pulsing with a rhythm that felt almost like breathing. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Thelzara said beside him. Her crystalline voice held genuine warmth. "I've spent 6 weeks looking at it, and it still takes my breath away if my species breathed, that is." Marcus smiled slightly. "It's incredible. How close can we get?" "This is as close as safely possible. The structure's energy field extends roughly 100 meters from its surface. Any closer and our ships experience system failures. Nothing harmful, but disruptive enough to make closer approach impossible." Marcus nodded, his eyes never leaving the puzzle. He walked along the observation window, watching from different angles. The patterns changed depending on perspective. From the left side, he saw spiral formations. From the right, they looked more like waves. From directly center, they almost resembled... He couldn't quite place it. "Your people spent 47 hours calculating possible solutions," Marcus said. It wasn't quite a question. "Yes. Our quantum computers are the most advanced in the known galaxy. We mapped every stellar drift pattern for 500,000 years. We calculated the gravitational effects of every body within 10,000 light-years. We accounted for dark matter fluctuations, quantum probability clouds, and dimensional membrane stress. And none of it worked." Thelzara's body flickered with what Marcus had learned to recognize as frustration. "No, the puzzle accepted our input. It processed our solution. Then it rejected it and reset itself with additional complexity. It's as if it's learning from each attempt, making itself harder." "Maybe it's testing something else," Marcus said quietly. "What do you mean?" Marcus turned to look at her. "You tested mathematical ability, computational power. What if that's not what it wants?" Before Thelzara could respond, Commander Vossitek entered the observation deck. His heavy steps announced his presence before his voice did. "Ambassador, I hope the humans' observation time has been enlightening. My team is prepared for another attempt." Thelzara's eyes swirled with concern. "Commander, after the defensive pulse last time..." "We have adjusted our approach," Vossitek interrupted. "We will not trigger the defense again. My strategists have identified what they believe are neural pattern analogs in the puzzle's structure. If we can stimulate them in the correct sequence, we may be able to convince the puzzle we are authorized users." It was an interesting theory. Thelzara agreed to observe the attempt. Marcus asked if he could remain on the observation deck as well. Vossitek agreed with a dismissive click of his mandibles. The Hronite approach was impressive to watch. Vossitek's team had set up multiple transmitter arrays around the structure. Each array would send a specific signal pattern designed to mimic what the Hronites believed were precursor neural signatures. "Beginning sequence," Vossitek announced. The arrays activated. Beams of modulated energy struck the star puzzle from 12 different points simultaneously. The symbols on the surface began to react, moving faster now, swirling in response to the signals. Marcus watched with fascination. For a moment, it seemed to be working. The patterns were aligning. Colors synchronized across the surface. The sphere began to emit a harmonic tone. Then the patterns broke apart. The tone became discordant. The puzzle reset itself again, but this time it added something new. Where there had been one layer of moving symbols, now there were 2. The complexity had doubled. Vossitek's antenna drooped with defeat. 52 hours of preparation, gone in 15 minutes. Over the next days, Marcus watched the remaining attempts. Each species brought their unique perspective and abilities. Each one failed in spectacular ways. The Mindari tried to commune with the puzzle telepathically. They formed a circle of 12 minds, their thoughts joining into a single powerful consciousness. They reached out to the structure, trying to understand its purpose, trying to feel what it wanted. For 19 hours, they maintained their connection. Marcus watched as their ethereal forms glowed with concentration. He saw the puzzle respond, saw the symbols arrange themselves into new configurations. The Mindari pushed deeper, their combined consciousness pressing against the puzzle's mysterious intelligence. The connection broke suddenly. All 12 Mindari collapsed, their forms flickering as they struggled to maintain cohesion. The puzzle had pushed back, not violently, but firmly, like a door closing in their faces. The Zendori were next. Their silicon-based biology allowed them to perceive energy in ways organic life couldn't imagine. They saw the universe as vibration and frequency. To them, the puzzle wasn't visual at all. It was a symphony of energy waves, each one carrying meaning. They brought instruments that measured energy across 10,000 different wavelengths. They mapped every frequency the puzzle emitted, searching for the fundamental harmonic that would unlock it. 31 hours of continuous scanning. They built a complete energy profile of the structure. When they played back their solution, matching every frequency they had detected, the puzzle flickered. The symbols dimmed. For one heart-stopping moment, everyone thought the Zendori had turned it off. Then, the puzzle brightened again. Its patterns more complex than ever, the Zendori had come close, but close wasn't enough. The Korathi attempt was the most unsettling to watch. Their species existed partially outside normal time. When they focused on the puzzle, Marcus could see them flickering through multiple moments simultaneously. Past, present, and future seemed to occupy the same space around them. They viewed the puzzle across 17 different timeline branches. In one timeline, they solved it through mathematics. In another, through energy manipulation. In a third, through something Marcus couldn't begin to understand. But in every timeline, they were viewing the attempt itself. They were watching themselves fail or succeed. The quantum observer effect became relevant. By observing their own success, they changed the probability. The timelines began to collapse into each other. For 23 hours, the Korathi held the quantum states open. Marcus watched as the puzzle responded in ways that seemed to defy normal physics. Symbols appeared and disappeared. The structure seemed to exist in multiple configurations at once. Then, one timeline proved more probable than the others. It collapsed into reality. In that timeline, the Korathi had failed. The puzzle reset itself. Again. Ambassador Chen found Marcus in the station's commissary that evening. He sat alone, reviewing footage of the attempts on his datapad. He'd watched each recording dozens of times now. "You're obsessed," Chen said, sitting across from him. "Curious," Marcus corrected. "There's a pattern here, I just can't see it yet." 6 of the galaxy's most advanced species couldn't solve it. What makes you think you'll spot something they missed? Marcus looked up from his datapad. "Because I'm not as smart as they are." Chen blinked. "That's an odd thing to say. Think about it. Every species that tried brought their greatest strength. The Quilarians brought their mathematical genius. The Hronites brought their strategic minds. The Mindari brought telepathy. Each one approached the puzzle using the thing they're best at." He gestured at the datapad. "What if the puzzle doesn't want the thing they're best at? Then what does it want?" Marcus looked out the commissary window at the distant structure. "I don't know yet, but I'm starting to have an idea." That night, another council meeting was called. Frustration had turned to desperation. Some delegates were again suggesting the use of force. Others wanted to abandon the project entirely. The puzzle was clearly beyond their ability to solve. Perhaps the precursors made it intentionally unsolvable, one delegate suggested. a test that proves no current species is worthy of their technology. Or, perhaps, Thelzara said quietly, we are all thinking about this the same way we're all using our advanced abilities, our sophisticated technology, our complex understanding of physics and mathematics. She paused. What if the puzzle wants something simpler? Vossitek's mandibles clicked. Simpler? The precursors were not simple. Their technology operated on principles we still don't fully grasp. True, Thelzara agreed. But sometimes the most advanced civilizations appreciate elegant's simplicity. Perhaps we're overthinking this. Marcus raised his hand. The gesture was so human, so primitive compared to the neural links and holographic interfaces the other species used. Every eye, sensor, and detection organ turned to him. I'd like to try, he said. His voice was steady despite the attention. If you'll let me. The silence that followed was profound. The observation deck was crowded. Word had spread that the human was going to attempt the star puzzle. Representatives from a dozen species had come to watch. Some were curious. Others came to witness what they assumed would be an amusing failure. Marcus stood before the holographic projection of the puzzle. It rotated slowly in the center of the room, a perfect three-dimensional representation of the actual structure outside. The symbols crawled across its surface in their endless, incomprehensible dance. Thelzara stood beside him. Dr. Webb, I want to be clear about expectations. No one will think less of you when this doesn't work. Your species is young. You lack the computational tools and advanced understanding that— I know, Marcus said. There was no offense in his voice. I'm not going to use computational tools. Vossitek clicked his mandibles from across the room. Then what will you use? Intuition? Hope? My eyes, Marcus said simply. Several species exchanged glances. The Quailarian assistant whispered something to Thelzara that made her crystalline body flicker with what might have been amusement or confusion. Marcus ignored them. He walked around the holographic projection, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at it from the left side, then the right. He stepped closer, then moved back. His eyes tracked the moving symbols without focusing on any single one. Can you slow it down? He asked. Thelzara gestured to her assistant. The hologram's movement slowed to half speed. The symbols crawled across the surface more gradually. Marcus watched for 30 seconds, then he shook his head. No, that's wrong. Speed it back up. Actually, can you show it at real-time speed? The actual speed the structure is moving right now? The assistant looked confused. We've been analyzing it at slowed speed because the patterns move too quickly for organic perception to— Real speed, please, Marcus interrupted gently. The hologram accelerated. The symbols flowed and shifted at their natural pace. Marcus watched. His eyes moved back and forth, tracking something. The other observers couldn't tell what. Can you rotate it? Marcus asked. Show me the view from different angles, not the mathematical rotation, just like I'm walking around it. The hologram began to rotate slowly. Marcus held up his hand. Stop, right there. He tilted his head, squinted slightly. Can you rotate it 90 degrees to the left? The projection shifted. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. Interesting, he murmured. He stood there for another 3 minutes. Just looking. Not calculating. Not analyzing energy signatures or quantum probabilities. Just looking. The assembled observers began to grow restless. This was what the humans' great attempt consisted of? Standing and staring? Dr. Webb, Vostek said with strained patience, while we appreciate your observational approach, perhaps you might explain what your— It's not a star map, Marcus said suddenly. Silence fell across the observation deck. I'm sorry? Thelzara said. Marcus turned to face her. His expression was troubled. as if he was working through a problem in his head. Everyone's been treating it like a star map, plotting stellar coordinates, calculating gravitational drift, mapping quantum fluctuations across space-time, right? Yes, Thelzara confirmed. The symbols clearly represent stellar bodies. The patterns show movement consistent with orbital mechanics. It's obviously an astronomical chart of some kind. But what if it's not? Marcus said. He turned back to the hologram. What if you're supposed to recognize the pattern, not calculate it? Recognize it? Vosatek's voice carried skepticism. Recognize it as what? Marcus walked up to the control console. Can someone hand me the interface pad? The Quillarian assistant glanced at Thelzara, who nodded. The assistant handed Marcus the pad with obvious reluctance. It was the control interface for the structure itself. Every failed attempt had been input through this device. Dr. Webb, Thelzara said carefully, that device is connected directly to the puzzle. Any incorrect input will cause it to reset and add more complexity. We've already made it exponentially more difficult with our failed attempts. I understand, Marcus said. His fingers hovered over the interface. He looked at the hologram one more time. Then he looked out the window at the real structure hanging in space. He started entering coordinates. What are you doing? The Quillarian assistant moved closer, trying to see the input. Those numbers don't correspond to any stellar coordinates in our database. They're not even following proper astronomical notation. Marcus ignored him. His fingers moved with confidence now. He entered a sequence of spatial coordinates, but not the kind that mapped stars through quantum mathematics. These were simple, three-dimensional points in space, the kind of coordinates a child might use to plot dots on a piece of paper. Those are meaningless, Vosatek said. Random numbers. This is a waste of... The star puzzle responded. The symbols on the real structure outside began to move differently. Not faster or slower differently. They flowed together, merging into larger patterns. The individual symbols that had confused everyone for weeks suddenly connected into lines. The lines formed shapes. In the observation deck, someone gasped. It might have been Thelzara. The shapes were constellations, not the complex, mathematically precise stellar charts the Quillarians had calculated, not the energy frequency maps the Zendori had created. Simple constellations. The kind humans had been drawing since they first looked up at the night sky and connected stars with imaginary lines. Marcus entered another coordinate, then another. He was pointing to specific stars within the constellations, identifying them in sequence. That's Orion, someone whispered in the crowd. One of the other human observers had recognized it. That's Orion's belt. Marcus kept entering coordinates. More constellations appeared. The Big Dipper, Cassiopeia, the Southern Cross, Canis Major with Sirius burning bright, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. They were constellations from Earth's sky. The puzzle continued to respond. With each correct identification, more symbols aligned. The colors synchronized. The random chaos resolved into order. It was like watching an image come into focus. Marcus entered the final coordinate. He touched a point that corresponded to Polaris, the North Star. The star puzzle stopped moving. For one breathless moment, nothing happened. Every being in the observation deck stood frozen. Even the species that didn't breathe seemed to hold their breath. Then the structure began to emit a harmonic tone. Not discordant like before. Perfect harmony. The symbols locked into place, forming a final image across the sphere's surface, a complete star chart. Earth's night sky, exactly as it had appeared 2 million years ago. Deep within the structure, something mechanical engaged ancient systems powered up for the first time in eons. A seam appeared in the surface, previously invisible. The seam widened. The entrance was opening. The observation deck erupted in chaos. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages and communication methods. Lights flashed. Sensors wailed with alerts. Everyone was trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Thelzara's voice cut through the noise. "Silence!" The room quieted. She turned to Marcus, all 6 of her crystalline eyes focused on him with intensity. "How?" she demanded. "How did you solve it?" Marcus looked at the now open structure. He seemed almost as surprised as everyone else. I looked at it. I stopped trying to calculate or analyze. I just looked." He gestured at the hologram. "When you let me see it at normal speed, from different angles, I started seeing shapes. Familiar shapes." "Familiar?" Vosatek approached, his battle armor clicking. "Those constellations are from Earth, from your homeworld. Why would a precursor puzzle use patterns from a primitive world in an unremarkable star system?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But that's what it was. Not mathematics, not quantum mechanics, just pattern recognition. The kind humans have been doing since we lived in caves and hunted by starlight." The Quillarian assistant was reviewing the data on his own pad. His crystalline form pulsed with agitation. "The structure accepted his solution in 4 minutes and 37 seconds. 4 minutes. We spent weeks on this." "Because we were looking at it wrong," Thelzara said quietly. There was wonder in her voice. "We brought our advanced understanding, our sophisticated tools, and the puzzle didn't want any of that. It wanted someone who could simply see." Marcus looked around at the assembled aliens. At their advanced biology, their incredible technology, their billions of years of evolutionary superiority. "Maybe," he said carefully, "sometimes being advanced means you forget how to see the simple things." Outside, the ancient precursor structure stood open, waiting. Its entrance was a dark opening filled with the promise of technology beyond imagination. But for the moment, no one moved. They were all too busy staring at the human who had solved in minutes what had taken them weeks to fail, at the primitive observer who had succeeded where the galaxy's greatest minds had failed, the human who had remembered how to look at stars and see pictures in the darkness. The entry team assembled quickly. Thelzara insisted that Marcus be part of the first group to enter the structure. Vosatek agreed, though his mandibles clicked with residual frustration. A dozen other species representatives joined them, along with security personnel and scientific specialists. They crossed to the structure in a shuttle. The ride took only minutes, but it felt longer. Marcus sat in silence, looking out the viewport at the ancient sphere growing larger. Now that it was open, he could see faint lights glowing from within. The structure had power. After 2 million years, it still had power. "Nervous?" Thelzara asked beside him. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "I still don't understand why the puzzle used Earth's constellations. We're nobody. We just got here. Perhaps we're about to find out." The shuttle docked at the entrance. The airlock cycled. When it opened, they stepped into the precursor facility for the first time. The interior was vast. They stood in a chamber that stretched hundreds of meters in every direction. The walls glowed with soft bioluminescence, providing light without any visible source. The architecture was smooth and organic, more grown than built. It reminded Marcus of pictures he'd seen of the inside of seashells. "Atmosphere is breathable," one of the Zendori scientists reported, checking instruments. "Oxygen-nitrogen mix. Gravity is 0.98 standard. Temperature is comfortable. It's as if they prepared this place for us." "Or for someone like us," Marcus said quietly. They moved deeper into the structure. Corridors branched off in multiple directions, but one path was clearly marked. Lights brightened as they approached, dimmed behind them as they passed. The structure was guiding them somewhere. They entered a second chamber. This one was smaller, more intimate. The walls were covered in displays. As the team entered, the displays activated. Information began scrolling across them: star charts, chemical formulas, technical diagrams, mathematical proofs, all written in languages no one could read yet, but accompanied by universal symbols and images that transcended language. "This is it," Thelzara breathed. "The repository. Precursor knowledge. Centuries of advancement. Right here." The Quilarian scientists immediately began documenting everything their quantum arrays captured the data, beginning the long process of translation and analysis. The technology represented on these walls could reshape civilization faster than light drives that didn't require exotic matter. Energy sources that tapped directly into dark energy. Medical techniques that could extend life indefinitely. But Marcus wasn't looking at the walls. His attention was fixed on the center of the chamber, where a raised platform held something that looked like a control console. Above it, a holographic projector flickered. "There's something here," he called. The others joined him. Vosatek studied the console with a warrior's caution. "It's a communications device, or a recording system. Should we activate it?" "We came this far," Thelzara said. She reached toward the console, then paused and looked at Marcus. "Perhaps you should do it. You're the one who opened the door." Marcus hesitated, then placed his hand on the console. It was warm to the touch. It responded to his presence immediately. The holographic projector activated fully. An image appeared above the platform. It was a figure humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, standing upright. The face was smooth with 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth. The proportions were almost human. Almost, but not quite. The figure was taller. The limbs were longer. The eyes were larger and set wider apart. But the resemblance was unmistakable. "Greetings," the figure said. The voice came from everywhere at once, translated simultaneously into every language represented in the chamber. "If you are seeing this, then you have passed the test. You have proven you possess the sight we valued above all else." The hologram gestured, and the image changed. It showed the galaxy spinning slowly, stars marked in light. "We were the precursors. You know us by that name, though we called ourselves the observers. We traveled this galaxy for 10 million years. We saw wonders and horrors. We accumulated knowledge and technology beyond measure. But in all our travels, we learned one great truth." The galaxy image zoomed in, focusing on a spiral arm, a small yellow star. Advancement comes with a price. As species evolve, as they develop technology and understanding, they lose something precious. They lose the ability to simply see, to perceive without analyzing, to understand without calculating. The image showed different alien species. Some Marcus recognized from the concordance. Others were unknown, perhaps long extinct. "We visited 1,000 worlds. We watched 1,000 species grow from primitive to advanced, and we watched each one lose their primal sight, the same abilities that allowed their ancestors to survive, to find food, to read the sky and predict the weather, to see patterns in chaos. These abilities atrophied as technology replaced them." The image shifted to Earth. Blue and green, small and beautiful, orbiting its unremarkable star. "Then we found you. Humanity. You were young. So very young. You had not yet left your world. You huddled in caves and feared the dark. But when we watched you, we saw something remarkable." The hologram showed ancient humans. They sat around fires, looking up at the night sky. Their faces were filled with wonder. You saw pictures in the stars. You connected random points of light into images, bears and hunters, queens and scorpions. You created stories from chaos. You found meaning in randomness, and you remembered these patterns, passed them down through generations, not through genetic memory or digital storage, but through story and tradition. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Around him, the other species watched in silence. "We tested many species," the precursor continued. "We left puzzles across the galaxy, mathematical challenges for the Quilarians, strategic problems for the Rhonites, quantum riddles for species that perceive multiple dimensions. Each puzzle required the solver to use their greatest evolutionary advantage." The hologram gestured at the chamber around them. "But this place, this repository, we sealed with a different test, not a test of advanced ability, a test of primal perception. We showed you stars as they appeared from your world. We asked only that you recognize what you have seen every night since your species learned to look up." "Why?" Thelzara asked. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the hologram responded as if it had heard. "Because we knew what you would become. We calculated your trajectory. We saw that humanity would one day reach for the stars. And when you did, when you joined the greater galactic community, you would be surrounded by species far more advanced than yourselves. Species with computational power you couldn't match, biological advantages you couldn't compete with, understanding of physics and mathematics beyond your comprehension." The precursor's expression became something like a smile. "We knew you would feel inferior, primitive, lesser. So we left this gift for you, a puzzle that only you could solve, a reminder that advancement is not the only measure of value, that sometimes the most sophisticated understanding begins with the simple ability to see what is there." Vosatek stepped forward, his antenna quivering. "Are you saying humans are superior to us? That their primitive pattern recognition is more valuable than our strategic minds or the Quilarians' mathematical genius?" "No," the precursor said gently. "I am saying that every perspective has value. Every species brings something unique. You, Commander, with your warrior's strategy, the Quilarians with their mathematical precision, the Mindari with their telepathic communion. Each gift is precious. Each is necessary." The hologram turned to Marcus specifically. "But humanity brings sight. The ability to look at complexity and see simplicity, to find patterns where others see only chaos, to remember that sometimes the universe doesn't need to be calculated. Sometimes it just needs to be seen." The image began to fade. "The knowledge in this facility is now yours. All species of the Concordance may benefit from it, but remember, technology and understanding are tools, not ends in themselves. Never forget to see. Never stop looking at the stars and finding pictures in the darkness." The hologram disappeared. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of the displays around them. Marcus realized he was crying. He wiped his eyes quickly, embarrassed, but when he looked around, he saw that Thelzara's crystalline body was pulsing with emotion. Vosatek's antenna drooped in what might have been humility. Even the other species seemed moved. "They saw us," Marcus said softly. 2 million years ago, they saw humans in caves, and they left this for us. They believed we would make it to the stars." "They had faith in you," Thelzara said. "When you were nothing but primitives with no technology, no space travel, no understanding of the cosmos beyond your own atmosphere, they looked at you and saw potential." She turned to face the assembled representatives. "And they were right." In the hours that followed, the scientific teams began the work of cataloging the precursor knowledge. But Marcus stood on an observation platform, looking out at the stars through the structure's transparent sections. Real stars. Not holograms or sensor readings. He saw Orion, eternal hunter, forever chasing across the sky. He saw the Big Dipper, pointing always toward Polaris. He saw the Southern Cross, guide to navigators for thousands of years. He saw pictures in the darkness, just like his ancestors had done, just like the precursors had known he would. And for the first time since Earth had joined the Galactic Concordance, Marcus didn't feel inferior. He felt exactly what he was supposed to be. human. The discovery of the precursor repository changed everything. News spread through the galactic concordance within hours. Within days, it was the most discussed event in civilized space. The ancient technology would advance every species by centuries. But that wasn't what captured everyone's attention. It was the human who had solved it in minutes when the galaxy's greatest minds had failed for weeks. Marcus found himself unexpectedly famous. His face appeared on news feeds across 100 worlds. Scholars requested interviews, politicians wanted audiences. Other species suddenly spoke to him with respect rather than dismissive politeness. He hated it. "I'm not a hero," he told Ambassador Chen one evening. They sat in the station commissary, which had become his refuge from the constant attention. "I just looked at a picture and recognized what I saw. Any human could have done it." "But you were the one who did," Chen replied. She sipped her tea with a slight smile. "And whether you like it or not, you've changed how the galaxy sees humanity. We're not just the new species anymore. We're the species that sees what others miss." Marcus stared into his coffee. It was real coffee, shipped from Earth at enormous expense. One of the perks of sudden galactic importance. "That's a lot of pressure." "Yes," Chen agreed. "It is." The work of exploring the precursor facility continued. Teams from every concordance species worked together, carefully documenting everything. The technology was staggering. Energy shields that could protect entire planets. Propulsion systems that made current faster than light drives look like steam engines. Manufacturing techniques that could build starships in days rather than years. But the most interesting discovery came 3 weeks after the initial opening. The facility had other chambers. Other rooms sealed behind additional locks. And every single lock was a puzzle designed to test a different kind of thinking. Thelzara called Marcus to the observation deck one morning. She looked excited, her crystalline body pulsing with rapid color shifts. "We've found 16 more sealed chambers," she said without preamble. "Each one has a different puzzle, and we think each puzzle requires a different species to solve it." She pulled up a holographic display. It showed the facility's layout, with sealed rooms marked in red. "This one uses quantum probability calculations. We believe only the Karathi can solve it. This one requires telepathic communion, perfect for the Mindari. This one is a pure strategic challenge that Commander Vostek is eager to attempt." Marcus studied the layout. The precursors built this place for all of us, not just humans. Exactly. They left challenges for every species that would eventually join the concordance. They predicted our development, our strengths, our unique perspectives. Thelzara's voice carried wonder. The star puzzle wasn't meant to prove humans superior. It was meant to prove that every species has value, that every perspective is necessary. Over the following weeks, the other species began solving their puzzles. The Karathi unlocked their chamber by viewing quantum probabilities across multiple timelines simultaneously. The Mindari opened theirs through pure telepathic resonance. Vosatek and his Hronite strategists cracked a military puzzle that required coordinated tactical thinking across 17 different battlefield scenarios happening at once. Each success felt like validation. Each species found something the precursors had left specifically for them. A challenge that honored their unique evolution, their special gifts. Marcus watched it all with growing understanding. The precursors hadn't just left technology behind, they'd left lessons, reminders that advancement took many forms, that intelligence wasn't just about computation or strategy or telepathy. It was about perspective, about seeing the universe in ways no one else could. One evening, he found Thelzara in the main research chamber. She stood alone, studying data streams on the holographic displays. When she noticed Marcus, her crystalline body flickered in greeting. "Dr. Webb, I was hoping you'd come by." Just Marcus, please. I think after all this we've moved past formalities. Thelzara's body pulsed with what Marcus had learned to recognize as her equivalent of a smile. Very well, Marcus. I wanted to share something with you. A realization I've had. She gestured at the data streams around them. Mathematical formulas scrolled past at incredible speed, far too fast for human comprehension. My species has always prided itself on our computational ability. We can calculate in seconds what takes others hours. We've built civilizations on pure logic and mathematical precision. You're incredible at it, Marcus said honestly. Yes. But we've also become dependent on it. When faced with the star puzzle, our first instinct was to calculate, to analyze, to reduce everything to numbers and formulas. She turned to look at him with all 6 eyes. We forgot how to simply look, how to trust our perception without verification through calculation. You're being too hard on yourself. Am I? Thelazara pulled up an image. It showed one of the early Quilarian attempts at the puzzle, overlaid with their calculations. Billions of numbers. Quantum probability maps. Gravitational field analyses. Look at this. Look at how much we added to something that was actually quite simple. We made it complex because we couldn't imagine a solution that wasn't. Marcus studied the display. He could see what she meant. The Quilarians had turned a visual pattern into a mathematical nightmare, not because they had to, but because that was how they saw the universe. The precursors taught me something, Thelzara continued. They taught me that sometimes our greatest strength can also be our greatest weakness. We are so good at complex calculation that we've forgotten simple observation. We've optimized ourselves for sophistication and lost our ability to appreciate simplicity. So, what will you do about it? Thelazara's body brightened. I'm going to learn. I've requested access to human educational materials about astronomy, the old ones. Before your species had telescopes and computer models, I want to understand how humans learned to recognize constellations, how you passed down knowledge through stories rather than data, how you saw pictures in random stars and remembered them for generations. Marcus felt touched. I'd be happy to help with that. I was hoping you would. Commander Vossitek had his own revelation. Marcus found him in the tactical center one day, standing before a holographic display of the Hronite puzzle. The commander had solved it successfully, but he was reviewing the solution over and over. Something troubling you, Commander? Marcus asked. Vossitek's antenna twitched. I solved my puzzle. My strategists and I coordinated 17 separate battlefield scenarios simultaneously. We achieved perfect tactical synchronization. It was a triumph of Hronite military thinking. But I've been thinking about your puzzle. You solved it alone. No quantum computers, no hive mind tactical networks, no advanced analysis tools, just your eyes and your brain. Vossitek turned to face Marcus. How did you maintain confidence in your solution without verification? Marcus considered the question. I didn't know I was right. I just trusted what I saw. The pattern was there. I recognized it. That was enough. Trust without verification, Vossitek repeated. My species doesn't think that way. We verify everything through strategic analysis, multiple scenarios, probability calculations. We never act on instinct alone. Your way works too. You solved your puzzle. Yes, but it took us hours of coordinated effort with hundreds of strategists. You solved yours in minutes. Vossitek's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Perhaps there is value in learning to trust perception, to act without endless strategic planning sometimes. It goes against everything my species believes, but the precursors clearly thought it important. The changes rippled through the entire concordant species, began studying each other's cognitive processes with new interest. The Quilarians set up exchange programs to learn human pattern recognition. The Hronites invited human observers to their tactical academies to teach intuition alongside strategy. The Mindari wanted to understand how human consciousness worked without telepathic links. Humanity's position in the Concordance transformed. No longer were they the new species, the primitives who needed to learn from their betters. They were partners, contributors, teachers as much as students. Earth received requests from across the galaxy. Could they send teachers? Could they share their educational methods? Could they explain how they trained perception and pattern recognition? How did humans teach their children to see? Ambassador Chen found herself negotiating cultural exchange programs rather than trade agreements. Human educators were suddenly in high demand across civilized space. "It's remarkable," she told Marcus one evening. "6 months ago, we were begging for a seat at the table. Now species are lining up to learn from us." "It feels strange," Marcus admitted. "We're still the least technologically advanced. We still have so much to learn. But we have something to teach, too. That's the point. That's what the precursors wanted us to understand." Marcus stood at his favorite observation window that night. The star puzzle facility hung in space beside the research station, no longer mysterious, now fully cataloged and explored. But it had done its job. It had taught the lesson the precursors intended. As he looked out at the stars, he saw the familiar constellations Orion the Hunter, the Big Dipper pointing to Polaris, Cassiopeia's W shape, the pictures his ancestors had drawn in the darkness thousands of years ago, the patterns that had guided sailors and farmers and wanderers since humans first looked up and wondered. Butte,